Welcome to Attican Plays Railway Empire. All right, hi, this is Attican and welcome to another Railway Empire video. This is part 2 of our look at the third and final scenario in the new Crossing the Andes DLC. This one's called Summiteer. It's all about building track in rough land, in big mountains and lots of slope and everything going on. So in our first episode, we got off to a great start. Now we're going to build on that. And what I'm circling there is just to point out that there's another niter deposit down there to the south, just below Santiago. And down in Concepcion is another warehouse that takes niter. Now, if you've seen the first part, you know that's a big deal. So we're going to leverage that later on. But I'm really looking across the map and really trying to plan out how I want to do this. So what I've decided to do is use stations. I contemplated using warehouses so we don't have to have the connections, but that is very expensive. It's very slow to get warehouses going. They are great when you have money. I've said this before. But to use them early in these scenarios is really a great way to ruin your score because it just takes too long to get them going. So we're going to go ahead and make a connection down here to Coquimbo, which is down south of Iquique. Now we built Iquique up to 50,000. We've got to build 7 cities total in our connected network to 50,000. So we've got 1. We need to build 6 more. So what we're going to do as a strategy is build a 3-city cluster down here with Coquimbo, Santiago, and Concepcion. Coquimbo is beer. Now I know that's chacha, but I'm calling it beer. Coquimbo is beer, Santiago is meat, and Concepcion is beer. So we got beer meat, and we can even finish off the triumvirate later. So we got connections all the way around. I'll explain that later, what that means for those of you who aren't familiar with the my concept of a 3-city cluster. But we're going to have a 3-city cluster, and we're even going to set up a line here so that we have a city-to-city line going between Coquimbo and back up to Iquique. Might as well make some revenue off that. If we're going to build that connection, we might as well make some money on it. And it sets up the lines that we can use then to deliver products down to Coquimbo and into our 3-city cluster later. So that's what we're doing here, setting that up. So again, the concept will be a 3-city cluster down here to the south. That'll be 3 of our cities. Iquique will make 4, and then we'll pick 3 more. You can kind of guess what they will be. If you're familiar with the map in the scenario, but we're going to pick 3 more and to get our total of 7. So we're going to set up city line, and we're going to keep, for now, we're going to keep running the cheaper train. Plane, I wish you could use it on this map. The cheaper train, so that we can afford them. It's just money is very tight. Even though we've got some good income coming from our niter over there to the north up the coast from Iquique, but just the same, money's tight, and we're on a tight time frame here to get all this done. 7 cities by 1906. So it gives us grand total of 3 years, and of course we want to get it done as quickly as we can to get as high a score as we possibly can. So now we see that Iquique has grown even more, and we're going to kind of try to keep that going. We want the growth because if it'll keep growing, it'll keep pumping more and more stuff, particularly even passengers and mail down here to Coquimbo, and that's all good. Just any city that grows that's connected in your network, assuming you're running some trains and got some things going there, you want them all to grow, really. So now we're looking at Santiago. Remember, we're going to have, there's meat here, so we're going to have a nice beer meat line going into Coquimbo. And I'm struggling right now. I'm literally trying to decide as I'm talking to you, am I going to show you all of this or am I going to do highlights? And the reason I'm struggling is I've finished, kind of spoiler alert, I finished the scenario and got it all recorded. Now I've got doing the voiceovers and to share it with you. And it's a lot. It's like 6 more hours of gameplay. So I'm not going to do 6 hours of video on this, and the only reason I'm not, because I know some of you like to watch, every bit of it, but I want to just show you the key concepts I use for each of the pieces of this, and kind of make it a little faster paced that way, and also free up the time so that I can go ahead and make some other videos I want to do about this game. Well, really some other games too, but as far as Railway Empire is concerned, we got 3 more characters we haven't really looked at, and with the character changes, you do need kind of different strategies. So I'd love to do, maybe a free mode play with each of the 3 other characters. Same map, can take similar starting positions, and then try to play to the scenario, that whatever scenario comes up for us, and just show how to best use that character. So that's my plan. So again, I'm going to kind of speed this up a little bit. I hope you don't mind, and kind of show you the highlights. And the main thing is for you to understand the strategy components of this. So the first one, of course, is to build a 3-city cluster down here in the south, and sticking with the point-to-point connections pretty much. I'd vary a couple of times, but pretty much staying with the point-to-point all the way through this. It just helps me stay organized. It helps me control the flow in and out of my platforms, keeps me from having delays, keeps me from making mistakes as I'm setting up my lines. And I've said this before, I play pretty fast, and that can be, fast can equal sloppy sometimes, and you can make mistakes, but with this point-to-point style, you make a lot less mistakes, and everything's a lot more manageable. And I will show you how it's morphed as we get to a better example. I'll show you how my total concept of point-to-point or dedicated lines has morphed into kind of a hybrid that I'm really happy with. So we'll get to that a little later on. So anyway, let me speed up for a little bit while we're going through setting up these city-to-city lines, and then starting to connect some goods into them. Okay, let's slow it down right here. You notice that I just kept building connections and what have you. And I bought that meat industry in Santiago because I want to pump it up. I want to pump it up at my pace. And look right here, another industry has opened up in Santiago. This is what I wanted to say. It's very crucial that when you've got a 2-city, 3-city, 4-city cluster, whatever it is, or any kind of city growth, whatever style you use, that you control the industries that go in those locations. And that's the strength of Roger now, because he can build those cheap industries. That Taylor was half price. That was great. We bought that meat industry without having to go to a bid, and it was not expensive. And now we own both those industries in Santiago, and we've got that meat pumped up so that it can supply for all 3 cities in our cluster. And the computer would do that if it owned it, but it would be too slow. They always seem like they're a little slow for me. I want to own them. Plus, you're making money on it. You're making money on it. You're shipping that cattle in there. You're making the money. And right now we're going to go right back out here and grab this llama wool, and that's going to turn that Taylor into a profitable business for us. We're going to have a profitable line here, and that Taylor, this is the key, that Taylor is creating a product that the other 2 cities will need. If they don't need it right now, they'll need it very shortly. And this is like having an industry and a rural station and another rural station, because that industry is now acting like a rural station, going to the other 2 cities and sending clothing out to the other 2 cities. So again, I've said this before, Make sure that when you're building these cities, you monitor those industries, and with Roger especially, grab those babies, get them and own them and make money on them, and make sure you have the right ones in there. Make sure you have the fundamental first earliest possible industries. Don't put a steel mill or a toy industry or chocolate or something in here too early. Put in your basic fundamentals. Sorry about that. I think I started preaching there for a bit. And it wasn't preaching, I was preaching. So I started preaching there for a minute. So sorry about that. Now, here's the other thing I did want to cover, though, real quick. You saw that thing where we got 8% bonus on freight. Well, there are some delicious, wonderful research items out there just made for making this map easy to play. The freight revenue, of course, is great, but there are actually better ones. There are 2 researches that give you 40% reduction in the cost of bridges. You can get bridges down till they are not that much more than regular track. Well, look at this terrain and tell me that if you could do bridges, and on here, by the way, here again, another industry has popped up. Now, another character couldn't do this, but Roger can say, hey, man, I've got wood set up in my system. I'm going to get a wood-based thing that's an early need. That's paper. And you can guess, of course, that a publishing company is going to come in their cluster too and use that paper, right, and create a customer for the paper. So, again, watch your industries. But, now I can't remember what I was talking about. But get your industries right and control the growth of your cluster. That's how a 2, 3, or 4 city cluster works, is having the right set of industries, city to city lines, so all those goods are exchanged between the cities. That's important. And then, of course, all your raw materials coming in, particularly, of course, the ones, the fundamental ones, the upfront ones, and the ones you need to supply the industries that you've just put in. Okay, and now I remember what I was talking about. Actually, I had to go back and listen to myself. That's sad, isn't it? But I went back, listened to myself, and figured out what I was talking about. The research. If you can get your tunnels or your bridges, one or the other, I picked bridges because I like bridges much better. They're just cheaper in general anyway. But if you can get one of those really cheap, they're just a little more than track. And then there are a couple more researches that actually make your track cheaper. So laying track is a big deal on this map because of all the elevation changes. So if you can get cheap bridges and cheaper track, it makes the whole thing easier. I can tell you that once you get those in there, they're to me they're more important than a train, because now I can build a bridge and take some of that elevation change out of my line, which makes my train run more efficiently. But I do it without a ton of cost. It's just those are sweethearts. And then there's some other great ones for again, bumping up freight revenue, multiple bumps of freight revenue on this research tree. Take a look at that when you're playing this one, and just keep in mind that you got to lay track first. In fact, if I go back and play this one again, I'm going to go seek out those track and bridge research items first and grab those first, because you're laying track from the very beginning, and you're not really in a position to upgrade trains, to go to faster trains for a long time. If you're going real early to fast trains, that would be a sign to me that you don't quite get it. You're not quite on top of the game. It's going to be you're going to really struggle to win on a very hard setting. But if you get that track straightened out first, so that you can lay track cheaply, that's where the general is great. If you can lay track cheaply, then and then better than the general, if you can lay track cheaply and lay down bridges cheaply, now you can play this map. Now, 2 of our cities have grown in our little cluster, and we're about to do something very important because we're starting to get a little bit of money. we are going to now invest in, we feel like we've got that three city cluster kind of set up, and it's time to go start the other one. But before we do, we're going to make one last investment to really get our economy going. We're going to buy that niter trough right up there called Carter Hollow, and we're going to run that down to Concepcion, to that warehouse, similar to the way we did the one going into Ica at the beginning. And this is just going to be a money-making machine for us all the way through this. We're going to, every time we have some spare money and think about it, we're going to go upgrade it and run some more trains and just keep a steady flow of niter going down there to that warehouse so it can be exported off to wherever, Europe or wherever they're sending it. And it's going to make us just a terrific, steady income all the way through the game. Now here, Coquimbo has grown through 60,000 already, and we're going to take advantage of that and put a museum in there to help it keep growing. Again, we want these cities to just keep on growing. So now we've got to go deal with our third set. There's three more cities to do. These are really the tough ones. This is our starting place, Lima, of all things, and Ica, and we're going to use Cusco as the third. Now, Cusco has meat. Ica and Lima both have beer, so we can get our beer meat thing going by setting them all up. So what we're going to do is set up city-to-city lines between these cities. And that's going to allow us to transfer the meat and beer, and also get some passenger revenue. Nothing wrong with that from these cities. And at this point, you can see this is okay. Now we're starting into terrain that's really hard. So we're thinking hard terrain. Let's see what we can do here. Look at that. We can get, if we wait until we have 300 points, we just need one more month to pass, and we'll have enough research points to get that concrete bridge, which is another 40% reduction on the price of bridges. Well, we can see from that terrain, a big old bridge is about to stare us in the face. So we're actually going to do something that I rarely do. We're going to wait. We're going to wait until December clicks over. That'll give us our enough points. We're getting 40 research points per month, so we can get just enough to get that bridge. And before we lay this track, it would be kind of a shame to lay it before. So there we go. Now we can get the concrete bridge, get a reduction on the price. There you can see we've saved a bunch of money on that, and now we can play with that line and look at it and say, that big giant bridge is only costing us like $100,000. Now we can get it down to like 75,000 for that big massive bridge. So in fact, even less, 50,000. So that research really helps, and here's a good example of it. And this is also a good example of just how tough this terrain is and how challenging it can be to lay track in through here. So get those track research, cheaper track, cheaper bridges. Eventually you can even get cheaper tunnels, but I'm a bridge guy. As much as possible, I go for bridges. And I tried to leverage that a lot here because I knew I already had them, and I didn't have enough research to get all of it, tunnels and bridges. So anyway, I'm going to keep with that setup. And there are a couple of interesting things about this particular one. So we'll talk about those. So here, it would be much prettier if we had a little straighter run up into that track, but I don't go for pretty. That'll be perfectly functional. Those trains are slowing down to come into the station anyway. So we're going to double track it back, point to point, city to city, Lima to Cusco, and run our city to city line. There are a couple of things kind of unique to this particular three-city cluster, and that's how I'm thinking of this, as if I didn't say so already, as a three-city cluster. there are a couple of things that are kind of unique to this one. Took a little different approach in terms of getting the goods to the cities. We've got a little income coming in now, and so I'm kind of hint hint. So that means a warehouse is a possibility. So now we're going to set up that line, Lima to Cusco. And again, we're still running our cheapest train we can get. We've got to get trains on the track. We'll get better ones later when we've got more money. And also notice there's been no maintenance set anywhere yet. That's not a mistake. That's by design. Maintenance slows you down. You're going to replace the trains anyway at some point, and they cost you money that frankly you don't have at this point in the game. So here we're going to modify the design that we did in the first video. And notice our cute little alien drawing or whatever that is. There's actually 3 or 4 right there together. I noticed some more as I was playing through this. But what we're going to do is run the niter now directly into Ica rather than into that warehouse. Now, why? This is working just fine. We're getting the niter into that warehouse quickly. It's efficient. We're moving it down to Ica on our line from the warehouse. That works, but that's where the problem is. It competes for resources. Those trains that are taking the growing resources, if you will, into Ica, like the fish and the clothing that comes from Iquique and whatever's there. Meat, that kind of stuff. Those things aren't getting hauled because all of our space is being used up hauling the niter. So we're going to set up a unique line just for the niter. So we're going to kind of run it down here and then merge it into that main line that's going down into Ica, and then we'll set up its own platform. So we want to have the niter delivery. We know it's going to be several trains by the time we're done. So we're setting up the niter delivery to have its own totally dedicated line to run on, so that the goods can flow and that money can keep coming in from the shipments and from the rural station, from the Chaplain Trough. So if we're going to have that kind of a line, then these trains, first of all, we've got to change the train line and say, okay, you're not going to the warehouse now, you're going to Ica. But as I said, we want to have a dedicated line for it. So I kind of realized, whoops, I didn't do the other end. So we're going to put in a new small station here in Ica, do the little back-to-back design, which I prefer. And then here's an example of sort of what I was talking about, the hybrid of the dedicated line. Instead of running this line parallel all the way up there to where it comes out of the trough, which is what I probably would have done in the past, I'm now kind of doing this where I like to have the nice long run up to the station so that the trains can get out of the way, so that trains going from this direction up to the left-hand station can go down one long path. Trains coming to go to the right-hand station could go down another long path, and they don't hold each other up. But at the same time, we don't have to build all that track. That track in the middle is really not that highly utilized because the trains just space out. They're all freight trains. They all space out. They run signal to signal and kind of stay out of each other's way. Once in a while, one will break down, but that's going to happen anyway. Can't stop that. And so that's how we do it. So it's sort of a hybrid. It's sort of you get a dedicated line at the station, but you participate in a truck line with everybody else. So that's the gist of it. There'll be even better examples later on. So now we've got our niter. We're in the process of setting up our niter so that we can run it straight into the city. We're also going to bump it up. We're going, if we can, we would love to bump it up and get some more revenue from it. So I'm going down here to see what level do I have on the one down at the other end? Okay, now here we go. This is a better investment. Double that one. We can get double production out of that one for 500,000. So we'll put a couple more trains on that line and make more money from that particular one from Carter Hollow. And here we even see we've got another business opportunity because we just went down there to look, and lo and behold, there's another opportunity down here in Concepcion. We've got another opening. So what do you think we might want to put in there? Well, we just put a paper mill up in what's it called, Coquimbo, and so of course we're going to put a something to use that paper down here, which will be a customer for our paper, but also will give us another thing that the other two cities will need, which is the news, the publishing output, books, magazines, newspapers, whatever they are. So that's that kind of symbiotic relationship again, showing that three-city cluster. But that was kind of an aside. I got distracted by that. I didn't even see that one coming. It's just a happy accident that I found it. We got to get back to this three-city cluster up here and get it finished off. So we're going to take a little different approach to get that beer meat line going from Cusco to Ica. We're going to go down here. There's a nice little gap in these mountains, a nice little pass just above our niter. And we can come in and connect up with that line that we just created. This was all, part and parcel, one big plan. The reason to connect them, not only to free up the resources and get that niter on its own line, but now we can use that track to hook up to Cusco up here to our, I guess it'd be northeast. And that way we can build our city-to-city line between Cusco and Ica, and that's going to help both those cities grow, of course. So now we just merge in, and again, this is sort of the hybrid example again, big long run up into the station, but go into a trunk line and participate on that trunk line. And as long as you watch and don't even a trunk line can be overcrowded. You can see right here, Ica is actually diminishing. Where it's getting such poor supplies that it's actually diminishing. So we do not want that. So here we are. We're going to build another run up for another approach to the station. This is for our city-to-city line with Cusco. So we're running it out of a third track, but it's a point-to-point connection down at the station. But we've now got another double set of tracks, giving us a nice long approach to let trains come in there. Once they decide that's the platform they need to go to, they can get out of the way of the trains coming into that first platform. So platform one's got our niter coming in, and platform two will have our city-to-city line with Cusco. And then they go out and share some track, and then the Cusco line branches off and does its thing. Okay, so enough of that. So now we get our city-to-city line going. We can get some meat going down there to Ica. The one thing about, if you go back and look at the first part, that warehouse was really useful and helpful, and we had our line going between, we had the warehouse line going to try to feed Ica. It did not grow that well. We of course we focused on Iquique because that's the one we had to grow. So but here we need to grow all three of these. We need to grow Cusco and Ica and Lima. So again, the three-city cluster, get those city lines going between all three of the cities, and now the goods can interchange, and then we'll make sure that we have a way of feeding the right kind of raw materials in there. Well, that's going to come up next after we get the city lines going. promised a warehouse, so here we go. There's a position here where we can pick up corn and milk both from a single warehouse and not have to lay any track for that. So that's a tremendous advantage when you can get a reasonably located and reasonably in quotes here, because this is a tough spot, because again we've got to deal with now getting merged into this line and going down here, and dealing with the elevation changes and bridges and all that good stuff. This was a pretty tough one to set up, but I was adamant about keeping with the philosophy of the point-to-point lines. So I'm going to build point-to-point dedicated lines coming up here, and there's going to be one line to bring logs into this warehouse. We'll have the corn and the milk, and then that log line will also be shared with coffee. We'll bring coffee in, so we'll have those 4 goods coming into the warehouse, and that'll help to feed the raw material needs of our 3 cities in our cluster. So all 3 cities in the cluster are going to connect to that, and that's where it gets tricky here, is setting this up so that we can branch off of it and be able. Well, first, this one's easy, going just going from this line into Lima, no big deal, right? All we need is a little platform space, so we're going to have to do a little cleanup. So we're going to have to cut off the ends of the lines, so to speak, and set them up so that they can connect to both of those platforms. And here I did deviate slightly and put in the X, a diamond crossing, so that both platforms are available, and then just was specific about which one. And whether you do it like this or you do it with point to point, it's just a function of, obviously when it's a single station, you have to do point to point. And it's a matter of what you prefer. And it looks better like this. I'll grant you that. It looks better. Coming in kind of clean like that, but do what you like. So here we're running the one to Lima, and what we're going to do here, this is basically a taking situation. We are taking stuff out of that warehouse, like the fish corn and the milk and the logs. We're not really putting anything back, so we're going to actually have these trains sit there and run full. So they're going to fill up before they ever leave. And you can only do this because we have a dedicated line for each of our 3 cities on 3 of the platforms, and a 4th platform for the other 2 goods to come in. And that's where having this warehouse that can already have 2 things automatically in it is such a huge advantage, because we don't have to ship those in. We don't have to account for them and have the traffic flow problems of having all these trains coming in bringing us stuff. We can have the luxury of having our trains sit here in the warehouse, and they'll sit there forever if I don't go ahead and open this up. There, I finally punch in and tell it to actually take some product. And so now we can start running trains down to Lima. And we're going to add on top of that the trains going to Ica. And that's a tougher one. I mean, it's getting tight up there. So that again, a challenge to be able to put that in and figure out a way to branch off to go to Ica. And again, I absolutely do not want to go pass through the station in Lima. You could do that. In theory, that would work. And we could probably be very careful and do it. But again, I'm really trying to get these dedicated lines that don't have the traffic flow problems. So while this is a job to set this up, it's worth it once you get it going. So we're going to use kind of old school connection here. We're going to come down, link into the first one, go right in front of that, link over to the second track, and then run a track on the outside of that and run it just past all of that, and it'll merge in and give us a merge. There we go, right there, and that gives us the the merge we need. So now you can go in both directions back to yet another one. And the same concept here, a long run up, dedicated run up, so that the trains that are going to be going on this track down to Ica can come back, and if they happen to be queued, if there's one waiting in the warehouse, that's fine. They'll just stack up. We'll use our little Jan Jansen signals there to let them line up close to the warehouse, out of the way, so everybody else can keep moving, and that should flow nicely. Now the challenge becomes right here, trying to get that line to come off and go over to Ica. And I probably, in retrospect, I probably should have just redesigned this whole piece, gotten out the bulldozer and done some changes. But you've got that tower there. We've got the really steep drop off. So what I really decided was the best thing to do is just branch out back there, bite the bullet, build another bridge, which, is not that expensive thanks to our research, and then run it down to Ica. And this time, we're going to actually run a dedicated line all the way from the warehouse to Ica. So we're just merging it in there to see how we can come off, see if we can come off okay, and we can. So we'll accept that, then we'll run our line all the way down to Ica and give it a dedicated platform on the other end, and that way we'll have a good flow of our traffic from the warehouse to Ica, and hopefully get Ica started growing again, because we definitely need it to. At this point, just looking at to see where I want to go, and decide to go ahead and expand that right-hand station, open up another platform there, and run the warehouse to Ica line into the right-hand station, the way we're looking at it. So here's the other issue is it doesn't want to merge up there. It's too tight up there to do a proper merge and to get us into our line the way we'd like it to. We're okay down on this end, of course, got plenty of room, but up at the top where the bridge is, it's just too tight there. Right this minute, it just looks like it's just the supply tower is in the way. And of course, there's always a train using the thing you want to delete. That's just one of the rules of the game. But we'll let that one train run by it, and there we go. Now we can demolish the tower, get it out of the way, and see what we can do about running the track. See if it'll fit further down, and it really won't. So we're going to have to deal with that in a minute. Make sure there's supplies for those, the warehouse to Lima and the warehouse to Ica. Now, I'm not going to make you watch this whole clumsy attempt to get this going. Suffice it to say, I had to make several changes and try multiple times to finally get the bridge to work out the way, at least in a respectable way that I could live with. So what I ended up doing is actually tying off the return lane prior to the bridge. So you come up, stop, wait on the bridge, wait for the bridge to clear, then go take your turn to go up to the warehouse. So this one's probably, I think probably lesson learned here is if you have something that's that clumsy, you might want to think about the bulldozer and give it another shot and maybe move that warehouse back a little, give it some more room to work with if that's possible from the corn. But at the end of the day, as difficult as it was to build that track, it worked just fine. Once it got going, it worked just fine, and we got good flow of the goods down to Ica, and so what I'm doing here, of course, is setting up the line, and then we'll run logs in from over here to the east, and run logs into that one line that we left open. We have one open slot for the logs, and then we have one more open slot we haven't used yet. That's going to go back to Cusco so that Cusco can get supplies as well. So this one really, and just to kind of repeat what I said earlier. This one has 3 dedicated lines, one for each of the cities that it's going to serve, and then one dedicated line for getting 2 additional raw materials in there, along with the corn and the milk. And that configuration seemed to work very well, again, because the dedicated lines made the traffic flow good, in spite of, all that clumsiness trying to get down that hill. And by the way, if any of you have a better way to do the track getting down a hill like that, if you've got some kind of serpentine deal or something that works for you, please share that. I have found that get yourself cheap bridges and just go straight seems to work the best. At least it does for me. So now we're going to set up that third city to city line, warehouse to city. And what we're going to do, we've got that existing city to city line. It doesn't have too much traffic on it, so we're going to come off of the warehouse, come down here into that valley, and hook up to our city to city line, use that to haul the freight up to the city, and then we'll have a nice dedicated runway so we don't cause traffic jams at the city itself. And that 7-degree incline does not bother me in the least. First of all, well, it just doesn't. This is a mountainous terrain. There's going to be some inclines, so you just the trick here is, we've done our research to get the track laid, and now we've got research, and we've got the Mikado, which has 150% tractive power, so we can handle this, no problem. So now we're going to set up a line so that we can get into Cusco on a free line and not tie up the city-to-city line, and we'll be good to go. We'll have our, we've got city-to-city lines between all 3 of these cities in our little cluster, and we've now got, after we finish this, we'll have all 3 of the cities coming out of that warehouse so they can get supplies. And we should be good to go, and we'll be able to grow our little 3-city cluster and finish off our task of getting 7 cities to hit population of 50,000. Now, I will kind of critique my own play. I think this could have been faster had I not been so quick to go down and get expand the niter and put in another industry down in Concepcion and all that. But it's one of those things, because it pays off later on. It really helps your economy to have that money coming in. It's allowing us to build this faster than we would have been able to otherwise. It did kind of take our attention away from it for a while, but it's sort of pay me now or pay me later kind of thing, I guess. But it all worked out. So now we're finishing off that line, and I'm just going to let it run for a little bit, let you, and we can you can watch it and fast forward, and then we'll kind of wrap this one up. And one other quick note here, if you have a 3-city cluster like this, particularly where you got 2 beer, 1 cattle, make sure that you've got, 2 beer, 1 meat. Make sure you've got cattle going to that meat, because it's got to supply 3 cities. So we are making sure that we have a good supply of cattle coming up to Cusco. All right, so that's kind of the heart of the strategy and what we did to get our 7 cities to grow. We had great growth in that southern group of Concepcion, Santiago, and Coquimbo, and we did okay up here in this really clumsy area with Lima and Ica and Cusco, and it was just a matter of kind of watching the cities at this point, giving in some extra goods if we needed. I ended up running some fish up to Cusco just to make sure it was getting fish. because there were some fairly handy. But mainly the key is, of course, to have this 3 city-to-city lines, well, 2 city-to-city lines connecting all 3 cities, and then having that warehouse with some goods in it, then augmenting those goods, making sure they've got the cattle running in, and then you're good to go to get your 3-city cluster, at least to that 50,000. Now, to grow it bigger takes more work than that. You have to really watch the industries and everything, but the basics like this will generally get you to 50,000. So hopefully there was something there that can help you with your game, and I hope you'll join us for our next one when we start talking about the steel business and running some very long lines on our map. I hope you enjoyed this. I hope it'll help you become a better player, and I hope you'll join us for our next Railway Empire video. Thank you.